Wendy Williams was excluded from the entertainment world and labeled unstable primarily because she would not remain quiet. Katt Williams recently disclosed the specific actions the industry took against Wendy Williams and identified the individuals he thinks are following. Tinseltown truly is a business established on bullying and trickery.
I infiltrate the Illuminati, find out what the fuck they got going on, get the information, run back to y'all, tell y'all everything I know. That's my motherfucking job. But I don't know how many more times I'm gonna be able to sneak in there. Thanks to Shannon Sharp and 90 million views, I can't sneak very often. So while I was in there this last time, knowing that my last report might be my last report, I went in there and I got information for everybody. Look at my white friends. Us too? That's right, white secrets.
Tinseltown power players have attempted to hush Katt on numerous occasions. He was presented with wealth, companions, stardom, and parts in several of the most massive films ever debuted, yet he declined. He recognized that those proposals arrived with hidden conditions, and he stood firm against trading his integrity. In a late sit-down with Theo Von, Katt mentioned that he was stunned to witness exactly how influential Harvey Weinstein truly proved to be. Supposedly, Weinstein tendered Katt the chance to be with whichever performer he desired. Once Tinseltown grasped that Katt was not for sale, they ostracized him from the profession and distorted his reputation throughout. Katt stated that he forfeited agreements because he was not at ease portraying a female. This is the manner in which those upper echelons manipulate you. After they have secured you in a multi-million-dollar pact, they possess you. You must perform precisely what they command. You receive no compensation.
The one comedian that we've been sitting here doing this interview that you hold in very high regard is Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle walked away from 50 million. You said it was more. Tell the story.
That's right.
I will let you tell it.
No, you're
no, I want you to tell it.
You really are the best. You're proving it here today. As much as I'm proving it, you proving it. You proving it. Yeah, that wasn't the thing. It wasn't. People say that. He lost $50 million. No, that's not even close to what happened to this dude. And until you understand what happened to the dude, you don't understand what happened. Like, no, not they offered him 50 million and he turned it down. Who gonna turn down 50 million? Now, I've had to turn down $50 million 4 times. 4 times. Just to protect my integrity and that virgin hole I was telling you about. Right. Because P. Diddy be wanting to party. And you gotta tell him no.
The most tragic aspect occurred when Katt declined to submit to their demands, as those power players targeted his household and attempted to remove his offspring. Katt was characterized as a threat to his youngsters and was forced to struggle in legal battles for numerous years merely to regain the right to visit his children.
No, this is their 9th time coming to my house. The problem was this time they came to my office and took my kids from an office. Not from my house, from an office. So now when I can't have my kids at my office,
that's an issue.
I must be the most terrible black dude. Because here's the whole thing. You gonna charge me with child endangerment? After I adopted 7 children and had them for 14 years in this state? Really? You coming after my kids now? Because it was already a witch hunt. Now you want my babies? Yikes.
One individual this narrative appears remarkably similar to is Wendy Williams. Wendy spoke up regarding how a specific group of people were dominating Hollywood and how executives like Diddy were compelling artists to perform and behave more femininely. Wendy was labeled unstable and pressured to remain separated from her offspring, all due to a single discussion. In 2013, Wendy Williams shared her thoughts on the softening of hip-hop. After offering her perspective on rappers' style preferences, she highlighted that closeted gay men have constantly been present in rap, even during the 1980s. Throughout the conversation, Wendy Williams disclosed that she had been terminated for attempting to reveal that Diddy was gay.
Right, well, Kanye had the kilt, and then ASAP had the long dress.
Yeah.
Have you seen the ASAP picture?
Yeah, I'm not down with any of that. I mean, wouldn't be my man.
No?
No.
We brought in Lord Jamar from Brand Nubian. Because he had made some comments about that.
What did he say?
Well, he talked about the whole feminization of hip hop culture from the 80s on.
I think he's taking the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about how when we were younger, you wear earring in your left ear, and that was considered straight, and earring in your right ear, that'd be gay. And then at one point, people started wearing both earrings, and
and then they started wearing girl pants, and then they're wearing jeggings, and then yes, it's very effeminized, but be very clear, there were lots of homosexuals in hip hop back in the 80s too, that was. What's worse, hip hop wearing skirts or hip hop being closeted and having a plethora of kids to prove manhood that, and denial of something that you shouldn't have to deny, which is your sexuality. So I hear what Jamar is saying, but we come from a very homosexual era of hip hop as well. There was a radio personality once upon a time. Her name was Wendy Williams, and she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle.
Shortly following this conversation, Wendy was purportedly identified with cognitive decline and severed from Tinseltown. She was even compelled to reside at a mental health center, being administered medications against her simply because she chose to unmask Diddy for the individual he truly represented. We are only currently discovering that Wendy never actually possessed dementia at the start, and every bit of this was executed merely to muzzle her.
A series of depositions that not only prove that she's being held against her will, but also threaten to dismantle the Hollywood pedophile ring's sinister web of coercion and control. We've got the tapes, and they're shocking. It's clear that Wendy is currently living in fear for her life. They're locking up a mentally stable woman who holds incriminating evidence against some of the world's most powerful people. And they're doing it in broad daylight in front of the entire world.
Wendy Williams is locked in a room in an assisted living facility in New York. That's her. The only way I could interview her was to have a camera in the street, because we can't get a camera in. She can't really have any visitors. She cannot go outside. She's been out twice in the last 30 days. She has no internet. She, and I think rightly, says she feels like a prisoner.
Terms of Wendy's guardianship seem to be extreme. I've spoke to her several months ago, and she just sounds like the same Wendy. Yes, is she quirky? Sure. Is she eccentric? Sure. She always has been.
And now a new revelation. Her team says a new medical evaluation ordered by Wendy's court-appointed legal team, finding she does not have frontotemporal dementia.
She does not have frontal lobe dementia. So that should be game, set, match.
Gene Deal, the former protector of Diddy, likewise validated that Diddy served as the cause for Wendy Williams being ostracized from Tinseltown. It was never due to an erroneous cognitive decline identification. These power players dominate the business, and should you voice opposition toward them, they will demolish your household and your profession. Wendy is prohibited from departing the supported living center she has been compelled to inhabit, and throughout the previous decade has been mandated to ingest tranquilizers daily.
See, what people don't understand about Puff is that he held the entertainment grip, especially for the people who was his former artists, in a chokehold. If you didn't do what he say do, if he didn't like you, you would never ever work for Bad Boy or anybody in the entertainment business again. He did it to Kirk Burroughs. You understand? He did it to Wendy Williams. He did it to a lot of people, bruh. So now her going back is just wanting to get food on her table, keep a roof over her head. Because nobody was probably telling her, yo, I can't work with you. I can't deal with you unless Puff say so. I'm not gonna work with you. I'm not gonna do anything, because they didn't want to make him mad, because he had enough power in the business to stop her.
Once the profession perceives that it cannot manipulate you, it severs ties. Katt disclosed that entertainers with agreements valued at hundreds of millions of dollars are characterized as unstable. Thus, the media firm can withdraw from the pact and avoid compensating them. Immediately when performers cease generating revenue or attempt to reclaim authority, the administrators are ready to perform whatever is necessary to eliminate them.
In order for the type of ratings we need and attention to be on this thing. See, what I'm saying is, in business, nothing is coincidental, or you would be hearing who's losing money. in all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year, and it's over. And the money goes up and up and up. So they killed this $20 million guy, but they reaped $60 million in benefits.
Wow.
And they had some people from your city do it.
Wow.
I'm saying there's the good side and the bad side of these businesses, and
but think about what you just think about what you just said. That's extremely thoughtful and powerful.
This is what occurred to Dave Chappelle. Dave was muffled and severed from his agreement because of the things he spoke and because he could not be managed. Dave Chappelle possessed a $500 million pact that he was stripped of and characterized as a substance abuser. Whenever one entertainer falls, another individual is profiting from the circumstance. One post regarding the event stated, "It is incorrect what transpired with Dave. Excessively many decent individuals having negative events occur to them, particularly one as gifted as Dave and benevolent. Offense against mankind."
You say that, but your
we
fans
take it
have
another
a
way.
difference of
We're
opinion.
your fans. We think you cold.
Prove my points.
Well, that's why I said your fans have a difference of opinion.
But Dave Chappelle was decapitated in front of us. And until we deal with that, until we deal with the fact that a devout Muslim who doesn't eat bacon was accused of being a crackhead, until we establish the fact that they said that he went to Africa to smoke cocaine when we know they don't have running water and food over there, when they don't have paved roads over there. You saying he flew past Chicago and Miami and LA and New York and Detroit? You saying he went past Cleveland and Fort Pierce, Florida, and he went past Okeechobee and Oakland? You say he went to another country where they're not eating?
Right.
You talking about somebody who has a wife and children, 5 children, and lives on a farm, doesn't live here in Hollywood. You saying you convinced people that person was an insane crackhead, and he hasn't been on movies and TV for 8 years? Is that correct? Okay, then don't tell me about what you want to tell me about. I just watched you decapitate the king in front of me, and then act like he's supposed to catch up and be a regular comedian like everybody else. But no.
He didn't go for that.
That's not how it went. He was out there with us for 20 years. They called him Pilot Boy because he had 19 pilots in Hollywood, and everybody passed on him and said his show wasn't worth it.
What do you think of
Then when he made $500 million, they said even though his contract said he should get half of it, they said he made too much for the contract to be valid, so we'll offer you 10% of what you made. You mean he made $500 million and they offered him 50? Yes. And he said, what do you think my fans are gonna say when they find out you offered me 10% of what I made you? And they said, your fans will believe that you're a crazy crackhead by the time you get home. And my nigga got on the flight in LA, and by the time he got to Ohio, it was so. And 8 years later, he hasn't been in a movie and or television. Is just now trying to do his real comeback at Radio City Music Hall.
Even back in 2017, nearly a decade before anything concerning Diddy emerged, Katt Williams went on record and stated that you must trade your spirit and honor if you desire to thrive in Tinseltown. He mentioned that the identical executives who dominate the profession are utilizing their positions to procure young males and females for exploitation to other power players. He specifically identified Diddy and Epstein as the 2 leaders.
Everybody is a supplier. Epstein, Weinstein, like these guys knew what these extremists liked and provided it, and provided the way for you to to have $1 billion and not create a fantasy island type environment has not existed throughout history.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I was going to run some global power organization, I would try to co-opt every single leader, try to suck, offer support, bring them out to wherever the fuck I have my big-ass meetings, fly everybody in private jets, talk about the climate crisis.
All organizations have to follow the same rules.
Yeah, that's wild.
Recruitment is an important facet of all.
We have to get some young global leaders.
Well, understand, this is the only reason that we can talk about these big Illuminati-like entities at this period of time. It's just because of time. They aged out. You can't get in new. So everybody got decrepit over there, and they can't exchange real.
Every bit of this becomes even more logical once you observe that the talent scouts who were laboring for Epstein have been permitted to escape. FBI records from the most recent Epstein document disclosure demonstrate Epstein's primary recruiter, Jean-Luc Brunel, proposed to turn and unmask the total exploitation circle for protection. The DOJ entirely disregarded him to shield the power players until he was discovered deceased in a penitentiary.
And this is an FBI file that says one of Epstein's, it says what appears to say BFs, best friends perhaps, Jean-Luc Brunel, has, quote, helped get girls. He is wanting to cooperate. And it goes on to discuss a plan for that, and that he's hired a lawyer and how that would work. And so these are notes that date all the way back to a period where Brunel was believed to have considered cooperating. If you haven't heard of him, if you haven't followed this case as closely, he's one of the key officials because he held himself out as a kind of modeling scout. He did, and that's debated over whether he was actually an alleged sex trafficker, but that was one of the tools they would use. He went into businesses that had arrangements with Epstein. He was on the flights a lot. So his name was one of those that had been around before.
We likewise understand that the identical physicians who characterized Wendy Williams as a cognitive decline sufferer and Dave Chappell as a substance user were purportedly laboring for Epstein. The New York Times recently examined the Jeffrey Epstein documents and discovered he maintained a web of doctors he was compensating throughout the US. One adolescent female sustained a grave cranial wound and received 35 sutures on Epstein's dining area surface. He would remunerate them with hundreds of thousands in contributions, presents, and assistance to their facilities such as clinical apparatus. They distributed the patient's confidential data with Jeffrey Epstein. What proved especially terrifying regarding this narrative was how Mr. Epstein proved capable of debasing a medical establishment, which was intended to be distinct. It provides you a feeling of what further might exist, as we persist in tunneling through these records.
This is a photo taken in Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. It seems to show a doctor performing a medical procedure on Mr. Epstein's dining room table. We looked through about 15,000 records from the Epstein files to understand how Jeffrey Epstein cultivated and rewarded a small circle of doctors as a means of control over the women in his orbit. Mr. Epstein dictated when these women got plastic surgery, even when they went to the gynecologist. And he could also take medical care away. In some cases, you also see the doctors help Jeffrey Epstein maintain that control over these women's lives. Here's one really striking example. Jeffrey Epstein is flying back from his island in the Virgin Islands to New York with a young woman who has suffered a really serious injury. He reaches out to somebody named Eva Dubin, former girlfriend of his, and the founder of the Dubin Breast Center at Mount Sinai. And he says, this woman fell off the ATV and needs stitches in her forehead. Can you organize? She responds, okay, Jess Ting, a plastic surgeon at Mount Sinai, is standing by. Call me as soon as you land. And then you see the next day from Jeffrey Epstein, Dr. Ting put 35 stitches in her head, laid out on the dining room table. And that brings us back to this photo, which appears to be of Dr. Ting. Dr. Ting declined comment on this photo. When we talked to medical experts, they said, there's no way you do this if you were putting the patient's needs first. If you were doing that, you just take her to the hospital. There's much more equipment, there's many more people, the risk of infection is lower. But the only reason you do this is if you were putting somebody else's needs first.
One of the country's most prominent physicians is in the Epstein files, and the emails look pretty damning. Dr. Peter Attia is a longevity doctor who is a New York Times bestselling author and the host of a popular podcast. Here is an alleged email from Dr. Peter Attia to Leslie Groff, who was one of Epstein's assistants. And it says, no, thank you so much. See you next time. Hopefully JE in town when I'm back in 2 weeks. I go into JE withdrawal when I don't see him. And this email apparently between Dr. Attia and Jeffrey Epstein with the subject, got a fresh shipment. You the biggest problem with becoming friends with you? The life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul. To which Jeffrey E. replies, "Afraid not." And there's another email with language that I don't want to share with you here today that is just not good. One person is reporting that there are 175 pages of documents with Dr. Attia in the Epstein files. Now, I don't know Dr. Attia, I've never met him, but I did not have this on my 2026 bingo.
Another identity that Katt cited was profession veteran Chris Tucker. At one juncture, Katt Williams maintained admiration for Chris Tucker. Chris declined the most significant part in his profession because he did not wish to endorse a damaging portrayal of black males to youngsters. Following this, Chris was coerced and pressured by the power players to carry out their instructions. Here is what Katt expressed regarding the circumstance.
The Chris Tucker that we got now is Epstein Island Chris Tucker, not Smokey.
Oh, Lord.
Whew. If I didn't know no better, I'd tell you he's the greatest. I don't care what you say. To be confident and not delusional is a real skill. Most of these confident people we see is real.
Shortly following this, images of Chris Tucker and President Bill Clinton on Jeffrey Epstein's personal aircraft surfaced. These photographs depicted Chris Tucker on the Lolita Express encircled by adolescent females. Purportedly, Chris Tucker traveled to Africa on what was labeled a charitable undertaking with Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and Kevin Spacey by journeying on Epstein's plane on September 2nd, 2002.
You knew Jeffrey Epstein, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. We flew Bill Clinton and a lot of different. That was a humanitarian trip to Africa, and I met him on that trip because it was his plane. I didn't know who plane we was getting on, but it was a whole bunch of dignitary people. We was with a delegation, and I met him, and you don't know people what they do in their private lives, so yeah.
But you gotta tell me this, Chris. He was on this private plane, and you could tell that it was a private plane because they called it, was it Lolita Express?
Oh yeah, it was a private plane. Yes. Oh yes.
But wait a minute. You didn't never go to that island, did you?
No.
Simply being on Epstein's aircraft does not establish misconduct, yet it is remarkably questionable, particularly after you listen to what the targets expressed regarding what occurred on that plane. In a 2015 Inside Edition sit-down, a previous cabin worker on Jeffrey Epstein's personal jet confesses that adolescent females were constantly on board. The aircraft transported several of the most influential individuals on the planet. Bear in mind that cabin staff and crew members all gave evidence that girls were present on the journey with Chris Tucker.
Wealth was so vast, the fact that he had this fleet of planes. We've heard a lot about the Lolita Express. What happened on the Lolita Express?
Everything that happened on the Lolita Express and his other planes was the same thing that happened in his bedrooms, in the massage rooms, on the beach, wherever we were. They did not stop because we're in the air. 95% of the time, there was always sex involved. Jeffrey couldn't take a 2-hour flight without having to ejaculate. That's how sick this man was.
How did you live every day? How did you get on board that plane? How did you live knowing you're going off to New York or to the island or to wherever you were about to be trafficked to? You must have been a ball of dread and anxiety.
I was horrified, I was sad, I was angry, I was disgusted. I was a shell, and the only way that I could cope with what I was going through was, taking Xanax. And Xanax is like an anti-anxiety tablet, but it also, it took away that feeling of anger, sadness. It made me feel numb. It was a numbing tablet, and it helped me cope with what was going on at the time. It took a lot of people involved. It took doctors, psychiatrists, gynecologists, dentists. All these people knew what was going on.
Any other names together. The police are out on stage, they cut to commercial, you didn't see what happened. By the time they come out, people have been removed, it goes on. it's certain ways things are handled when it's not intentional. When things go smoothly, but they seem chaotic, that means there was forethought and a plan. Somebody, even if it looks like, yeah, Janet Jackson just had a wardrobe malfunction. Yeah, there's no such thing.
Correct.
I don't care who you blaming.
I believe that.
Somebody benefited. Yeah. So in all of these situations, there's a business involved and there's real money involved, and somebody's benefiting from this thing that looks like, oh, that just happened. Nah, no way. No way.
Every bit of this explains why Dave Chappelle stepped away from the wealth. He even appeared on Oprah later and clarified his reasoning. Dave Chappelle actually described this flawlessly with what he labeled the salt trap. He stated a baboon becomes ensnared because it will not release the salt it seized, even when that is the sole thing holding it captive. And for Dave, that salt represented the riches, the stardom, and the agreement. The distinction is he released it.
Comedian Dave Chappelle left tens of millions of dollars on the table when he walked away from his popular Comedy Central show. A lot of people wondered what the hell was he thinking, and that's a quote. Chappelle says he had, or whether he was thinking. A lot of people ask that question. Chappelle says he had a crisis of conscience and stood up for his integrity as an artist. He explained to us how stepping out of the spotlight helped him avoid getting caught in a trap.
It's so much bigger than money, though, Dave. It's so much bigger than money.
Oh, no, it was bigger than money. But you know what? I watched one of these nature shows one time, and they were talking about how a bushman finds water when it's scarce. And they do what's called a salt trap. I didn't know this. Apparently, baboons love salt.
Okay.
So they put a lump of salt in a hole, and they wait for the baboon. The baboon comes, sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the salt. Salt makes his hand bigger, and he's trapped. He can't get his hand out. Now, if he's smart, all he does is let go of the salt. Baboon doesn't want to let go of the salt. Then the bushman just comes, takes the baboon, throws him in the cage, and gives him all the salt he wants. And then the baboon gets thirsty. The bushman lets him out the cage. The first place the baboon runs to is water. Bushman follows him, and they both drink to their fill. And in that analogy, I felt like the baboon. But I was smart enough to let go of the salt.
Isn't that a great analogy?
What an analogy!
I know. He's very, very thoughtful and very...
If everything Katt Williams is expressing even grazes the exterior of the reality, then this is not merely regarding a handful of stars. It is concerning how authority actually functions behind the curtains. Who receives protection, who becomes muffled, and who is characterized as unstable the instant they cease cooperating. If you discovered this analysis illuminating, ensure to join and activate alerts. These narratives transform rapidly, and we will be monitoring every fresh advancement as it reveals. Place your reflections in the remarks. Do you believe this is a fluke, or is there something grander occurring here?